Hi, this is Joseph with Conscious Collective, and today I felt inspired to create a video that speaks directly to the reasons why we don't wake up. Because for anyone that is on a journey of awakening, a journey of growing and evolving spiritually, of expanding their consciousness, there are many different obstacles that we come across on this journey. There are many things that keep us stuck, repeating the same old patterns, the same habits again and again, even when we know that there's more or when we've experienced more. So often, people that are on this journey have had really profound experiences, profound insights and realizations, and yet those insights and experiences can be so short-lived. And while they may have been really impactful for us, we tend to return to a more familiar way of being. We tend to come back to repeating similar patterns and really feeling stuck in these patterns, and there becomes a big gap between what we may know intellectually and have experienced perhaps in our lives and how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. And so I just want to share with you some of the things that I have found valuable for my own journey, with the hopes that they will add value to your life and support you on your journey. So I'm going to draw from some different perspectives, some different experiences, different teachings and insights that speak to this phenomenon that occurs for so many of us on this path. And the real reason why we don't wake up is because we choose not to. And this is not the most popular opinion, and it's because many people, many of us, tend to put blame on things outside of us. We blame our circumstances, we blame other people, we blame events in our lives, and it's so much easier to blame other things than to take full responsibility for ourselves and why we are where we are, why we feel the way that we feel, why we think the way that we think. But if we are completely honest with ourselves, and this journey really does require that we are, and if you're unwilling to be honest with yourself, then you're going to continue to stay stuck, because we really have to have the courage and the willingness to see ourselves honestly, to really observe what is occurring within us, what we are thinking, what are the choices that we're making, and really see this, accept this with honesty and with compassion for ourselves. But we get stuck in choosing ways of being that are limiting, that are not really best for us, or that are not supportive of our growth and awakening. And this is something that we are choosing. But why do we choose it? Why do we choose to repeat similar patterns instead of grow and evolve and change? Well, there's a quote that is by Alan Watts that says, "Waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be." And the fact is that we all have a sense of self, we all have a self-image, we all have an idea of who we think we are, and we identify with this image. We have a certain perception of ourselves, and many of the patterns and habits that we repeat in our lives are upholding this sense of self. They're reconfirming to us that we are indeed this idea that we have of ourselves. And as long as we identify with an image of ourselves, we're going to act and live in a way that's consistent with that image. And so it becomes really important for us to look within and ask ourselves, what is it that we identify with? Where do we derive our sense of self from? And can we see how that shapes our lives in so many ways? Because this self-image, this idea of ourselves, often referred to as the ego, one definition for ego anyways, it is founded upon so many different things that we use to create a sense of self. So, for example, we can identify with our name, with our family name, with our culture, with our nationality, with our gender, with our sexuality, with our religious beliefs, our political beliefs, with our roles in life. And many people identify with these things, and they really think that that's who they are. They think that I am a Christian or a atheist, I am a liberal or a conservative, a Democrat or a Republican, I am a carpenter or a waiter or a doctor. I am a mother or father. I am, etc. Whatever they say after I am, they believe themselves to be this thing. And while these may be aspects of our identity, they're not the deepest truth of who we are. You are not limited to a religious belief, a political belief, to a nationality, to a race, to a gender, to a sexuality. While these all may be aspects of your being, they're not the deepest truth of who you are. They're not the you that feels yourself as you, that is perceiving and watching this video and experiencing it and feeling it, and that is alive in this moment here and now. That essence, that awareness, is so much more than any of these things can capture. And yet, we tend to create an image out of all of these things and then identify with this image as if this is who we are. And we try to uphold that image. We try to prove that image. We try to seek validation for that image. We defend that image whenever it is attacked in some way. And when it is attacked or criticized or judged, we tend to feel it as an actual threat to our existence when we are identified with this image of self. And so, in order to grow and evolve on this journey, we need to be willing to change and evolve our definitions and our perception of self. And as Alan Watts' quote implied, waking up to the truth of who you are requires that you be willing to let go of all that you imagine yourself to be. And we have great fear in this. We have great fear in letting go of our imagined sense of self. All that we've mistaken ourselves to be or thought ourselves to be, what we've identified with as ourself throughout our entire life, we feel great safety in that. We feel a lot of comfort in that. We feel some sense of belonging, some sense of our place in the universe. And so to question this and to, on a really emotional, existential level, to question and inquire into this can bring up great fear. Because if I'm not who I think I am, if I'm not this idea that I believe myself to be, then who am I? And that in itself can bring up great fear. Whereas if we feel that if we were to lose this idea, this feeling of self, then we're going to die, or are at least going to be in something that's so unknown, so unfamiliar, that it brings up this fear, and we tend to cling back to this familiar sense of self, these familiar patterns that uphold that sense of self, and we can get really stuck in that way of being because of fear. So we choose to stay stuck in a limited perception of self, in limited ways of being, because of fear. And it's not only the fear of non-existence, the fear of letting go of our familiar sense of self. There's another fear that's tied into this, and it is the fear of not feeling loved, the fear of not being understood by other people. So as I said in a previous video on this channel, that human beings have one emotional need, and this is the need to feel loved. And we will do so many things, or not do so many things, to try to meet this emotional need. The way that we act in the world, things that we post online, or reasons why we don't post online, the way that we dress, the things that we do, the people that we date, all of these things, so many of them are shaped by this desire and this need to feel loved, and a fear that if we do one thing, we may not feel loved. And that's really one of our deepest fears, is that we won't feel loved. And this comes up again and again on this spiritual journey, because as we grow and as we evolve, our perception gets further and further away from the average perception of the average person. And the bigger that gap gets, the harder it is for the average person to relate to us, and for us to relate to them on a deep, intimate level. And we really desire that connection. We really desire to feel understood. We desire to belong, to feel like we're a part of the tribe. It's hardwired into us. And so whenever there's a risk of being rejected, a risk of not being understood or not feeling loved, that can create a lot of fear in us, because the pain that comes with that feeling is so painful that many people would rather stay in a limited perception that is that they feel loved in than grow and evolve on their journey. And I think a great example that I can think of that relates to this is, imagine someone, maybe you can relate to this yourself, is born into a certain religion and born into a certain religious perspective and worldview, and all the people that they know and have been raised with perceive the world in this way. So their family, their friends, their acquaintances, their culture, they all think and perceive excuse me, according to this religious belief. And this person maybe one day has a spiritual experience that really transcends the limitations of that worldview and maybe can't be captured in that worldview. Maybe it's something so personal and so intimate, or so expansive that they start thinking differently than all of these people that they know and love and are familiar with. And when they start expressing these opinions or their experiences and realizations, everyone looks at them with this strange look. They don't quite understand it. They even start to question if this person's okay. They start feeling and treating this person differently, and that person feels unloved. They feel like they're being rejected, or like they're not belonging with all of these people that they feel loved from. And so they are faced with this choice. Do they continue to grow and evolve on their journey and risk not being loved, not being understood? Or do they just stop pursuing that altogether and just go back to this other way of thinking and perceiving so that they can feel loved and feel like they belong with all of those people? And when it's said this way, so openly and straightforward, it seems like most of us would choose to pursue the thing that's passionate to our hearts, regardless if people understood it or not. But if we're really honest with ourselves, many of us don't do that. Many of us don't be our authentic selves, express ourselves freely, or choose to pursue the things that are really meaningful to us because we fear what other people are going to say, what they're going to think, and ultimately fear that we won't feel loved. And it's because it is a very real emotional need that we have. But we are conditioned to meet this need externally, and that's why we depend so much on other people validating us and understanding us and being able to relate to us to feel loved. But you can also awaken to love within yourself by accepting yourself with love, and through continuing on this journey of awakening, waking up to the fact that you are not separate from anyone. And when you can recognize your oneness with everything and discover that truth of oneness within yourself, it naturally awakens this love within your heart. And you feel a sense of belonging within the universe just by being the universe, being an expression of the universe, or spirit, or God, or however you want to define it. When you can connect to that within yourself, you feel loved, and that feeling of love is within you. And so you no longer fear not feeling loved from something outside of you, because you're not dependent on that feeling from something external. But until we are at that place, at that consciousness level of love, there's this great fear. There's this great fear that we're not going to feel loved by other people if we choose to really pursue our path in the way that it's calling to us. So this is one of the main reasons why we choose not to wake up. It is our choice how we act in each moment, how we think, how we perceive, what we do, what we pursue. We are totally responsible, but we choose to stay stuck. We choose to stay limited because the patterns and habits that we are familiar with make us feel safe. They uphold the sense of self that we're holding on to, and they make us feel loved by the people around us. There are so many more examples that I can think of that can display this phenomenon. I think of people that are addicted to certain substances. Not only may that substance provide them with a sense of feeling loved in that moment, but also often people find a sense of belonging with the people that they are using those substances with. For example, if you drink and really like to drink and party, and all your friends drink and party, and you feel really loved when you're drinking and you're partying with your friends, if you decide that you no longer want to drink because it's unhealthy for you and you try to live a different way, all of those friends start to change their relationship and their attitude towards you, and you may not feel loved. You may not feel a sense of belonging. And so rather than continuing to choose this new healthy path, you go back to partying and drinking because you feel that sense of love and belonging. So there are many ways that this shows up in our life, but it all comes down to our choice. It all comes down to us choosing to do what we know is right in our hearts, to pursue the truth, to follow what our spirit and what our soul is telling us, regardless of how other people are going to think, regardless of how other people are going to perceive it. And also, we have to be willing to change our perception of self and to really understand the truth of ourselves, because we unconsciously just hold on to this idea of what we've always thought ourselves to be, and that can be really hard to allow that belief to dissolve and to be transformed and renewed. But we have to have that willingness and that openness, and it's our choice. It's our choice whether we allow ourselves to be open to this truth that is unfolding within us, or whether we choose to ignore it, and whether we choose to hold on to the familiar, to what is safe. But part of the blessing and the curse of this path of awakening is that it becomes harder and harder to do that. Once you have seen the truth, once you've seen beyond your limited perceptions, it becomes more and more painful to try to hold on to those perceptions, because you know they're not real, they're not the ultimate truth, and they don't have the same appeal that they used to have when you weren't aware of that. And so we're only going to continue to create more and more pain for ourselves by holding on to the past perceptions and misperceptions that we've had. And the only way to not feel that pain and to grow is to choose and to be willing to let go of that past misperception of self, and to be open to a new understanding of ourselves, a new perception of self. Because so much of this path of waking up, of spiritual awakening, is a big transformation and shift in perception of ourselves, of who and what we believe or know ourselves to be. So often shifting from this limited sense of being a separate self, a separate isolated self that exists, apart from everything else, to realizing that we are everything. We are the entire universe. We are all of existence that is expressing and experiencing itself within this limited, or within this individual form. So we're not separate. We're not separate in the way that so many of us feel ourselves to be. When we feel ourselves and perceive ourselves to be separate from the whole of existence, we tend to feel very alone and very afraid of the world. But when we can wake up to this truth that we are actually one with everything, then we don't feel fear. Instead, we feel great love, because we can see ourselves in everything. And it's important to be able to hold these two perspectives at once on this journey of knowing that you are both individual and whole. So I think a good analogy for this is if we can think of the ocean. There's only one ocean, but there are countless waves on the surface of this ocean. But every single wave it's not separate from every other wave. It is the ocean expressed as a wave. And in the same way, every conscious being, whether that is a human, animal, insect, plant, bacteria, any conscious being is, while they may appear to be separate on the surface, is an expression of this deeper consciousness. And so when we can wake up to that deeper consciousness, that presence within ourselves, and really recognize that as the most fundamental essence of our being, and recognize that is really who and what we are, it frees us from these from the limited perceptions that we've held about ourselves. And in doing so, it frees us from all of the stress and fear and just suffering that comes from that. So rather than needing to defend this image that we have or prove ourselves or validate ourselves, we can let all of that go and find peace in our being, find a sense of connection with all of life, and awaken, be awake to life, to the beauty of life within us and all around us. So this journey of awakening is really the most liberating, thing that we can experience, or the most liberating path we can be on in life. And it is extremely challenging and painful, and it will really destroy everything we thought we knew. But in that is born a new understanding, a new way of being, and one that is deeply fulfilling, one that is deeply liberating, one that brings us true peace, happiness, and love in our lives. So if you're on this journey of awakening, please be thankful. Be thankful that you are on this path, and know that if you're feeling stuck, there's a lesson for you to learn there. We only get stuck because there's something we're not seeing, something that we're holding on to, something that we're valuing more than this understanding of truth. And there's a lesson for us to learn. And it's in these painful moments, these moments of feeling stuck, the dark nights of the soul. Those are where we learn the most. And so while it may seem really painful or challenging at times, if you're in one of these places, know that there's a lesson to learn, and that you are in the place where you're going to learn the most. And that's a huge part of what our journey of life is about. It's about learning and growing and evolving our soul. So ask yourself, what is it that this experience, this time of your life is teaching you? What is it that you're not learning yet? What is it that you haven't yet understood? And if you're really honest with yourself, you might already know, because often our heart and our soul is already speaking clearly to us, but we tend to ignore that truth within us and try to avoid it and escape it and hold on out of fear, out of the fear of all these things I've discussed in this video. But if you're willing, if you're really honest and ask yourself, what is it that I am not seeing? What is it that this time in my life is here to teach me? There's a lot that you will learn. There's a lot that will help you to grow and to help you continue on your path. And when you see what it is and you learn the lesson, you'll likely have a big laugh and laugh at how you've been keeping yourself so stuck, choosing to keep yourself in this pattern. For what? For holding on to something out of fear, for to uphold some illusion of self, or some illusion of who you think you are. It is something that we continue to come across again and again on this path, is there are deeper and deeper and deeper layers of lessons for us to learn. And so when we learn that lesson, we're able to evolve, to grow, our perception of self changes, our definition of self changes, and we awaken, we continue to awaken, we continue to evolve. So that's all that I'll share for this video. But if you have any questions about this process, please leave them in the comments. I'm happy to discuss anything more particular on any of the things that I shared thus far. But I hope that this provided some insight for you. I hope that this was valuable to you, and I hope that you are able to continue to grow and evolve on your journey, and to choose love over fear, because as I mentioned, so much of this is about our choice. And really, we're always choosing between two things. We're choosing between fear and love, or ego and soul. And it is our choice. So even if things feel challenging or uncertain and you're not sure why, please choose love, trust love, and whatever feels like the loving path for you, make that choice. That is the most powerful thing that I feel that we can do on this journey to grow and to evolve, is to keep choosing love over fear. So may you choose love over fear, and may it help you awaken the love within your heart and liberate you from the fear of your mind and ego.